Time to deflate the balloon. Yes. Parents, friends of the graduates, colleagues, members of the administration, board of directors, my sister Mary, curious bystanders, and most importantly, members of the class of 2015. How nice to see you all. I'm honored, and I pretend to be humbled, by you choosing me as one of your speakers on this wonderful day. I intend once and for all not to run over the 10 to 12 minute limit for this speech. No one will need to shout out bing bong, as my students used to do, to remind me that there were 3 minutes left in class and that I had better stop talking. Today, I'll mention the Topkapi Palace, the residence of the Ottoman sultans for over 400 years, a Roman god, the New England Patriots, the poet Sappho, lions, and for good measure, a genie. I'll also mention Hawaii and Crest toothpaste, and I'll end by quoting Iago, the antagonist in Shakespeare's Othello. Several easily connected topics appropriate for graduation. Today, I'm about to reveal the secret dedication on the part of your Latin teachers that was the inspiration for this speech. As you students are aware, what's your most important subject at Sturgis? Correct, Latin. My poll of the faculty has confirmed this. I, like all good pollsters, chose to manipulate my sample to reflect what I wanted the result to be. My not-so-random selection of teachers confirmed to me that Latin is the most important. 2 teachers from East, and the randomly chosen Miss Robinson, Mr. Hooper, Miss Albus, and in only partial agreement, Mrs. Lee, all agreed on the importance of Latin. We use Crest toothpaste because 5 out of 6 dentists recommend it. So if clearly 5 out of 6 teachers recommend the daily brushing with Latin, then it must be good for the brightness of one's intellectual smile. By the way, U.S. News listed both Sturgis and Boston Latin as the top 2 schools in Massachusetts. Not by coincidence do they require the study of Latin. You should be able to see then why I turned to the Latin department for inspiration for the speech. It emerged directly from strange doings on the part of the Latin staff on the first and last days of each marking term and the first and last days of school every year. I thought at first they were memorizing a newly unearthed poem of Catullus, or better yet, another fragment of Sappho. On a less literary note, I was concerned that they might be discussing how Gillette Stadium could be better served by having real lions rather than the Detroit Lions come to play football against the Patriots. In the traditions of Rome, of course. Turns out I was wrong on both counts. I couldn't prove it at first, but I have since fabricated the evidence to do so. They were dedicating the beginnings and endings of days, marking terms, and years to the Roman god Janus. You may know about him from your Latin classes. Janus is the god with 2 faces, one looking back to the past and the other looking forward to the future. He was the god of beginnings and endings. He could see what had passed and what was to come. He was also the god of transitions, with special functions around the time of births and journeys. Janus is an apt symbol for what's happening to you today. It's the end of one voyage and the start or birth of something new. If Sturgis needed to be under the aegis of a Roman god, I think Janus is the perfect one for a high school such as ours. What a shame we don't usually see the unity of those 2 ideas, no? Like the Hawaiians do with their aloha for a beginning and aloha for a goodbye. However, I know some of you are visual learners. So, to help you understand this concept of Janus, I have gathered a two-headed Janus figure, not exactly in the classical tradition. Well, remember, dog is God spelled backwards, right? So, Miss Ackett, would you, since you've been carefully selected as the student closest to me, whose name I know, would you please? Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Getting ready to speak to you today with the evil spirit of plagiarism lurking over my shoulder, I read over a sample of graduation speeches already given this year. I read a lot of advice in these speeches to the students. Be bold, work hard, be yourself, put down your cell phone, dream, and most strangely, and potentially most enlightening of all, go build a fire. Nearly all were telling you people to look to the future. They all looked ahead. I'd like us to take a different approach and be like Janus and look back as well as forward. Let's look forward first. This is something you people have been doing for all of your high school years, and perhaps for all of your lives up to this point. I can't wait to be out of middle school. I can't wait to get my learner's permit. I can't wait to be a senior. Unfortunately, some of you, it was always, I can't wait for lunch break. As seniors, your forward eyes have always focused on getting into college, or thinking about a real job, or imagining life in the military. The problem with Janus looking forward is his vision is blurred. This view can't go any further than one's imagination. As entering freshman, you couldn't possibly imagine what this graduation day would be like, any more than you can now have a clear picture of what your life after Sturgis is going to be like. The forward look, the forward vision, the future look is always like looking through a glass darkly, with only a vague sense of what's to come. None of you will have Cassandra's gift and her curse of being able to accurately foretell the future. Well, let's take the look backward that Janus makes. Think about what you were like when you came to Sturgis as ninth graders. Think about how much you've changed and grown. Think about your favorite classes and teachers. Think about those moments of fear, nervousness, frustration, and struggle in class, on stage, in sports, followed by success and a new appreciation of your own abilities. Think about the times you laughed and were happy. This should all be part of your personal history of Sturgis. We require you to study a collective history in a thoughtful, truthful way by having history as part of the curriculum for 4 years. And you also study the cultural and linguistic heritage of our culture by studying the Latin language, mindset, for at least 2 years. This is so you can think about and know where we come from as a civilization and as a people. Think about it. For the first 2 years at least at Sturgis, 1/3 of all the things you study have you focus your vision on the past. For some of you, it's been all through your high school career. Why do we do this? The vision here is much clearer than our view of the future. We can see the results of decisions and how they played out in the world. We can see how differently people thought and even how they spoke in the past. As for your personal histories, you made decisions and developed some habits of mind, and you know what the results were. By looking back, we get to see our strengths and our weaknesses, and as a result, we can change how we do things now and in the future, based on our ability to reflect on what we've done in the past. We can arrive at a better understanding of how others thought and lived, and that helps us in our efforts, in our lives, to try to live authentic, and meaningful lives. Looking back, of course, always allows for nostalgia. Look back at your classmates. Look at the students seated around you. This is the very last time you will sit together as a class. They will not be there tomorrow, nor will you ever again get to share panicked last-minute notes for a history test, or get one of your classmates to show you one last time how to solve that difficult equation. No more getting into the wide open spaces of the senior locker area. An area, the only area I know of that makes airline seat size seem generous. This graduation ceremony then marks a day in which something significant has ended. No more high school. You finished the voyage on the good ship Sturgis from grade 9 to today. You began your voyage being closer to being a child, and you enter port getting closer to being a full adult. Look back at your school, your teachers and your school leaders, and think about the encouragement and dedication that my teaching comrades have given you. As flawed as all human beings are, we never gave up on you, nor did we ever lose faith in your ability to learn and to succeed. However, there's one little problem with the Janus myth, the Janus image, and that's that for most of you, there's a space in between. There's the summertime. It's a bit of space. It's an interregnum between what's ended and what's going to begin for most of you in the fall. This is like a room in the Topkapi Palace that the Ottoman sultans intentionally kept empty of all furnishings and decorations as well. This room had a name. It was called the residence place of the jinn, what we call genies. Right? It was a space inhabited by jinn, smoke, memories, and mirrors. A place of magic between otherwise mundane places. You've been so busy, especially during these last 2 years, that there's been little time for you to sit back and think about what's really important. Treat this summer as a time for calm, for preparation, for reflection. Treat it as an empty room in the palace of your lives. This coming summer is a magical summer between the last gasps of childhood and the first breaths of the real world. Use the time well. Curses. I ran over. I'm sorry. Well, then I remind you, like Janus, of 2 pieces of advice that I have. Remember, Janus, look backward as well as ahead throughout your lives. Remember where you're anchored. We can get lost looking ahead if we're not careful. So, as your parents told you when you were little, look both ways before crossing the street of life. You should also be sure to find space between events, other residence places of the jinn in your lives. And your lives will get busier and busier, and it'll be harder and harder to find these spaces. So you'll need to look very carefully to find these rooms. I believe, by the way, you'll do just fine in the days ahead. As Iago said, by Janus, I think so. Relax. Enjoy your summer. Use this time of the jinn well. On behalf of my fellow teachers, I wish you all Godspeed.